When Daniel Harlow bought the quiet stretch of land on the edge of Arizona, he expected nothing more than long days of ranch work and the comfort of a simple life. But everything changed the morning. His shovel struck something far heavier than stone. At first, he thought it was just another buried tool from the former owner. But as the dust slid off the object, a deep, carved pattern emerged, spirals, symbols, and lines that fit together with impossible precision. The circular relic seemed to glow faintly beneath the sun, as if it had been waiting to see daylight again. Though Daniel knew better than to meddle with something that looked sacred, curiosity held him frozen. He lifted it carefully, noticing how unexpectedly warm it felt, despite the cool soil that had hidden it. He carried it to his porch, brushing off the remaining dirt, turning the artifact over and over, seeing strange shapes that felt familiar, even though he couldn't name them. At the center was a raised dome, like the eye of a compass pointing toward something unseen. That night he could hardly sleep. His mind kept returning to the object's weight in his hands and the sense that he had disturbed something that wasn't meant to be touched. Before sunrise, he found 3 silhouettes waiting quietly near his gate. Their presence startled him, not because they were armed or threatening, but because they carried themselves with a calm authority that made the air feel heavier. The eldest of them introduced himself as Chief Nowlin of a nearby Apache community. His voice held no anger, only a certainty that immediately pushed Daniel's heartbeat into his ears. They explained that the object Daniel found was no ordinary artifact. It was a centuries-old ceremonial relic known to their oral history, believed to mark the resting place of a revered guardian who protected their ancestors during times of danger. The relic had been lost during a relocation era, its disappearance a wound the tribe carried for generations. Daniel wanted to return it right away, but Nowlin raised his hand gently and said it wasn't that simple. Removing the relic had awakened what he called an unfinished path, a responsibility, now tied to whoever disturbed it. Daniel felt his stomach twist, unsure whether he was listening to ancient tradition or something deeper and more mysterious. Nowlin asked permission to walk the land. The 3 visitors moved silently, their eyes tracing the ridges and gullies as if reading a language. The earth itself was speaking. Daniel followed, trying to make sense of the moment. Nowlin eventually knelt near the hole where Daniel had dug and pressed his palm into the soil. He said that once the relic was removed, the land became unsettled, and someone had to complete a long-delayed ritual to restore balance. Daniel hesitated, unsure of how he, a rancher with no ties to the tribe, could have any role in such a thing. But Nowlin explained that intention mattered more than ancestry. Whoever uncovered the relic became responsible for returning it through a process strictly guided by tradition. Daniel tried to ask questions, but the chief only told him that the tribe would return at dusk to give their final decision. As the sun dropped below the hills, Daniel sat on his porch staring at the relic, feeling as though every symbol carved into it shifted slightly whenever he looked away. He felt no danger, only a strange pressure in the air, as though the land was quietly listening. When the tribe returned, they were no longer only 3. More than 20 people walked toward him, each carrying lanterns that flickered in the growing darkness. Daniel stood, clutching the relic, unsure whether he should feel afraid or honored. Nowlin stepped forward and said the tribe had reached a decision. Daniel would not simply hand the relic over. He would accompany them to the place where their ancestors once gathered, a hidden ground deep within the canyons. Daniel started to refuse, but the chief's next words stopped him cold. If the relic wasn't returned properly, the imbalance on the land would grow, affecting everything: the soil, the water, the cattle, even the air itself. Daniel's entire life depended on this land, and something in Nowlin's unwavering tone made him realize this wasn't a threat. It was a warning rooted in deep, ancient understanding. With a heavy breath, Daniel agreed to go, even though he had no idea what awaited him in the canyon, or why Nowlin's final look toward the relic seemed filled with both relief and fear, as though returning it might bring a truth long buried back to the surface. Daniel followed the tribe into the canyons long before dawn, The winding trail illuminated only by lanterns that swung gently with each step, casting long shadows across the stone walls. The deeper they walked, the more Daniel sensed the air changing, not colder or warmer, but heavier, as though stories from another time pressed silently around him. The group eventually reached a narrow pass that opened into a wide hollow surrounded by stone ledges. In the center stood a ring of ancient wooden posts, worn from centuries but still upright, forming a circle that radiated quiet power. Naolin gestured for Daniel to step inside the circle and place the relic on a flat stone. Daniel's hands trembled as he set it down, partly from fear, partly from the overwhelming awareness that the ground beneath him held generations of memory. The tribe formed a semicircle behind him. No chanting, no loud ritual, only a deep shared stillness. Naolin instructed Daniel to place both hands on the relic and close his eyes. Daniel obeyed, feeling the surface warm beneath his palms. At first nothing happened, then an unexpected sensation pulsed. Through his fingertips, a soft vibration like distant thunder traveling through stone. Naolin spoke quietly, explaining that this was the relic recognizing it had been touched by someone who hadn't yet understood its meaning. Daniel tried to stay calm, focusing on the sound of steady breathing behind him. After a long moment, Naolin stepped forward and guided Daniel to lift the relic once more. They walked to a narrow fissure in the canyon wall, where a natural opening led downward. The tribe's lanterns illuminated a chamber lined with petroglyphs, circles, figures and patterns resembling those carved into the relic. Naolin explained that this chamber honored their ancestral guardian, not as a supernatural being, but as a symbol of unity during times when their people were forced to fight for their identity. Through hardship and upheaval, Daniel felt humbled, realizing the terrifying part of the tribe's demand wasn't violence or revenge. It was the responsibility of carrying a history far older than his own family line. Naolin motioned for Daniel to place the relic onto a carved pedestal at the chamber's center. As soon as it touched the stone, the vibration ceased, replaced by a profound quiet that filled Daniel with unexpected peace. The chief thanked him, saying the land could now breathe freely again. Daniel thought that was the end of it, but Naolin asked him to remain for one final step. The tribe gathered in a circle around Daniel. Not a single face showed anger or accusation, only a solemn gratitude. Naolin told him that returning the relic had tied him, in a small but significant way, to the story of their people. They didn't ask him to leave his land or repay anything. They simply asked that he protect and respect the earth beneath his feet. Knowing now what rested within it, Daniel nodded, feeling the weight of the promise settle on him. As they began the long walk back out of the canyon, Daniel found himself looking at the land differently. Nothing had changed about the cliffs or the sky, but everything had changed inside him. He understood now that the fear he felt wasn't of the tribe or their demands, it was fear of responsibility, of being part of something bigger than himself. When they reached the edge of the canyon, Naolin placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder and said the tribe would always remember what he did, not because he was chosen, but because he chose to honor something sacred, even though it wasn't his. Daniel returned home as dawn broke, passing the spot where he had first unearthed the relic. The hole was still there, but the land felt calm again, no longer filled with that uneasy pressure. He stood quietly for a moment, realizing that his life would continue just as before, except now. Every step across the soil carried a deeper meaning, and though he never sought recognition, the story of the rancher who returned the lost Apache Relic became a quiet legend whispered across nearby towns, reminding everyone that sometimes the most frightening demands are simply the ones that ask us to listen, understand, and honor what came long before us.